Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is considered one of the best composers of all time. He composed over 600 works in such diverse genres as symphonies, operas, concerti, string quartets, and other chamber music. A number of these works are considered the pinnacles of the genre. He struggled with recognition during his lifetime, refusing to be shackled to a wealthy house as a servant musician, instead heading out on his own to make his own fortune. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was born on the 27th of January 1756 to Leopold and Anna Maria Mozart in Salzburg. He was the youngest of 7 children, 5 of whom died in infancy. His elder sister was named Anna Maria Mozart, nicknamed Nannerl. He was baptized the day after he was born with the name Johannes Christomus Wolfgangus Theophilus Mozart. His family called him Wolfgang, and later in life he would sign his documents as Wolfgang Amadei Mozart. Amadei was a linguistic hybrid from a combination of the Latinized Amadeus and the French name Amide. Mozart's father was appointed as the 4th violinist in the musical establishment of Count Leopold Anton von Furman, the ruling Prince Archbishop of Salzburg. He was appointed the orchestra's deputy Kapellmeister, translated as the person in charge of music making, in 1763. Leopold Mozart was a talented musician in his own right and was a master teacher. During the year of his son's birth, Leopold published a violin textbook, Versuch einer gründlichen Violinschule, which achieved success throughout Europe. Leopold taught both Mozart and Nannerl everything they knew, from the performance on the piano and the violin, composition, and languages such as Italian and French with a little English, writing, and mathematics. By the time Mozart was 6 years old, Leopold knew he had a prodigy on his hands. When Mozart was 4, his sister Nannerl began piano lessons with their father. Mozart was enchanted with the instrument and began learning works out of her notebook. At 5, he composed some short keyboard works of his own, written down by his father because he had yet to learn to write notation. At 6, he started to teach himself violin, and at 7, he took up the organ. Mozart had to play standing up because he could not reach the pedals. By Mozart's 6th year, his father knew he had a prodigy on his hands and set out to show the world. What amazed the world was Mozart's ability as a performer on the keyboard and the violin, and his ability to improvise. Leopold decided to tour Mozart through the local courts, playing for royalty to amuse them and receiving payment in currency or gifts. From 1762 to 1771, the family toured on and off throughout Europe, attending courts and playing public concerts in South and West Germany, Belgium, Paris, London, Burgundy, Geneva, Vienna, Milan, Florence, Rome, Naples, Bologna, and Venice. During his first time through Italy in 1770, his voice broke, marking the end of his time he could be called a prodigy. Around the same time, he received a commission to write a serious opera for the Royal Theatre in Milan, the most notable task a musician could undertake in contemporary eyes. In Milan, Mozart wrote the opera Mitride, Re di Ponto, which was performed with success. This led to further opera commissions. He returned with his father twice to Milan for the composition and premieres of Ascanio in Alba and Lucio Silla. Mozart's early style, just coming to fruition in the 1770s, was subsumed in the major style of the time called gallant. The gallant style was drawn in opposition to the strictures of the Baroque style, emphasizing light elegance in place of the Baroque's dignified, serious, and grandeur. The complicated contrapuntal complexities of the Baroque gave way to the simplistic melody and harmony of the gallant style. Full of gentle feeling, these early compositions have little sense of the development through conflict, which would become a hallmark of his later, fully matured classical style. Mozart's Symphony No. 19A was written in London around 1765. The exact date is unknown because the symphony had been lost until an autograph in Leopold Mozart's hand was found. The date on it is called into question by Leopold's documented habit of taking years off of Wolfgang's age to improve the marketing of Wolfgang's talent. The symphony, which is in the gallant style, is based on the three-movement overture format, not a true symphonic style. It lacks tonal development and conflict, sticking to closely related keys. Most of the movement is driven by the string section, and it still has a continuo section comprised of a harpsichord and bass, left over from the Baroque style. It does not have the inventive woodwind writing that would be a hallmark of later Mozart. The woodwinds do little more than support the moving strings. Let's listen to a part of the first movement of Mozart's Symphony No. 19A. After finally returning with his father from Italy in 1773, Mozart was employed as a court musician by the ruler of Salzburg, Prince Archbishop Hieronymus Coroleo. The composer had many friends and admirers in Salzburg and had the opportunity to work in many genres, including symphonies, sonatas, string quartets, masses, serenades, and a few minor operas. Unimpressed with the climate for music in Salzburg, Mozart and his father went on many extended tours of Germany to try and find Mozart a post in another German court. All of these were unsuccessful. Mozart desired the opportunity to write more operas, the pinnacle of the composer's craft at the time. In August 1777, Mozart resigned his position at Salzburg and ventured out once more in search of employment, with visits to Augsburg, Mannheim, Paris, and Munich. During this trip, Mozart became acquainted with the stellar musicians of Mannheim, home to Europe's best orchestra at the time. He also fell in love with the singer Aloysia Weber. While Mozart was in Paris, his father was pursuing opportunities of employment for him in Salzburg. With the support of local nobility, Mozart was offered a post as court organist and concertmaster. The annual salary was 450 florins, but he was hesitant to accept. He dawdled on his way back, staying for a time in Mannheim again, but reluctantly came back to Salzburg in 1779. In January 1781, Mozart's opera Idomeneo premiered with considerable success in Munich. The following March, Mozart was summoned to Vienna, where his employer, Archbishop Coroleo, was attending the celebrations for the ascension of Joseph II to the Austrian throne. For Coroleo, this was simply a matter of wanting his musical servant to be at hand. Mozart indeed was required to dine in Coroleo's establishment with the valets and the cooks. Mozart plotted an escape from his position, giving concerts throughout Vienna. The Archbishop thwarted some of these planned performances, forbidding Mozart to play for the Emperor at Countess Thun's for a fee equal to half his yearly Salzburg salary. The quarrel with the Archbishop came to a head in May. Mozart attempted to resign and was refused. The following month, permission was granted, but in a grossly insulting way. The composer was dismissed literally with a kick in the arse, administered by the Archbishop's steward, Count Arco. It was at this time Mozart decided to break with tradition and his father's wishes and settle in Vienna as an independent musician. This was hard on his father because the model for musicians up to this time was to get a position at a court to create stability. However, the positions were on the same level as other servants in the household, often forcing the composers to wear livery when at court. Mozart chafed under these restrictions and followed a newer model for his life as an independent musician. This was also the model that Beethoven would follow years later, albeit with more success. Mozart's new career in Vienna began well. He often performed as a pianist, and he soon had established himself as the finest keyboard player in Vienna. He also prospered as a composer, and in 1782 completed the opera The Abduction from the Seraglio, which premiered on the 16th of July, 1782, and achieved considerable success. Their work was soon being performed throughout German-speaking Europe and thoroughly established Mozart's reputation as a composer. It was popular due to the Turkish theme it presented, where European Christianity and sensibility won out over Muslim customs, especially as it related to women. Right before the premiere of Abduction, he married one of the other Weber daughters, Constance. Mozart faced a challenging task in getting his father's permission for the marriage. The couple were finally married on August 4th, 1782 in St. Stephen's Cathedral, the day before his father's consent arrived in the mail. The couple had 6 children, of whom only 2 survived infancy. In 1782 and 1783, Mozart became intimately acquainted with the work of Johann Sebastian Bach and George Frederick Handel as a result of the influence of Gottfried van Swieten, who owned many manuscripts of the Baroque masters. Mozart's study of these scores inspired compositions in the Baroque style and later influenced his musical language. From 1782 to 1785, Mozart mounted concerts with himself as a soloist, presenting 3 or 4 new piano concertos each season. 2 of his most well-known from this period are numbers 20 and 21, written in a pair within a few months of each other. The dramatic minor number 20 is balanced by the sunny major 21. During this period, Mozart was at the peak of his powers in the classical style, leaning on tonal harmony to allow him to create works with substantially longer movements. By using the movement to far-reaching keys, he was able to create tension in these works that allowed him time to play out the subjects. Mozart revolutionized the piano concerto, giving it a structure that had not been seen before. Almost in sonata form, his piano concertos used a prelude for the orchestra only, exposition for piano plus orchestra, a first ritornello for orchestra, a middle section, piano plus orchestra, then a recapitulation, piano plus orchestra, and a final ritornello for orchestra, but always including a piano cadenza. This middle section acted as the development, allowing the concerto to go to neighboring and far-reaching keys. Let's hear some of the first movement of Concerto No. 21 with the piano and the orchestra. Mozart has fully realized wind parts in this work, and the individual wind instruments are used singly and together as a group. The concerto is scored for solo piano, flute, 2 oboes, 2 bassoons, 2 horns, 2 trumpets, timpani, and strings. This large orchestra dictated that it was played for a large concert in a large hall. Let's hear a piece of Concerto No. 21. Around the end of 1785, Mozart moved away from keyboard writing and began his famous operatic collaboration with the librettist Lorenzo da Ponte. 1786 saw the successful premiere of The Marriage of Figaro in Vienna. Its reception in Prague later in the year was even warmer, and this led to a second collaboration with da Ponte, the opera Don Giovanni, which premiered in October 1787 to acclaim in Prague, but less success in Vienna in 1788. The two are among Mozart's most famous works and are mainstays of the operatic repertory today, though at their premieres their musical complexity complexity caused difficulty both for listeners and for performers. These developments were not witnessed by Mozart's father, who had died on the 28th of May, 1787. Let's hear some of the famous finale to The Marriage of Figaro. In operatic finales for both the second and fourth act, the composer has all of the characters interact on stage in various duets, trios, and quartets until all the characters are on stage singing together. In the finale of Act 4 of Marriage of Figaro, Susanna, a maid, and the Countess, Susanna's employer, are trying to teach the Count a lesson in fidelity. Susanna had previously given a note to the Count to meet her in the garden. The Countess and Susanna switch clothes, so the Countess looks like Susanna. The Countess waits for the Count in the designated place. Figaro, Susanna's new husband, gets wind of the plot without knowing that Susanna and the Countess are switching places and becomes angry. When he finds out the details of the plot, he helps Susanna carry it out. Let's hear a small part of the finale of Act 4 of The Marriage of Figaro. In December 1787, Mozart again accepted a steady post from an aristocratic patron. Emperor Joseph II appointed him as his chamber composer, a post that had fallen vacant the previous month due to the death of Gluck. It was a part-time appointment paying just 800 florins per year and required Mozart only to compose dances for the annual balls in the Ringelsaal. This modest income became important to Mozart when hard times arrived. Court records show that Joseph aimed to keep the esteemed composer from leaving Vienna in pursuit of better prospects. Toward the end of the decade, Mozart's circumstances worsened. Around 1786, he had ceased to appear frequently in public concerts, and his income shrank. This was a difficult time for musicians in Vienna because of the Austro-Turkish War. Both the general level of prosperity and the ability of the aristocracy to support music had declined. Mozart's last year, 1791, was, until his final illness struck, a time of high productivity and, by some accounts, one of personal recovery. He composed a great deal, including some of his most admired works. Mozart fell ill while in Prague for the premiere on the 6th of September 1791 of his opera Le Clemenza di Tito. He continued his professional duties for some time and conducted the premiere of The Magic Flute on the 30th of September. His health deteriorated on November 20th, at which point he became bedridden, suffering from swelling, pain, and vomiting. Mozart was nursed in his final illness by his wife and her youngest sister and was attended by the family doctor, Thomas Franz Closet. He was mentally occupied with the task of finishing his Requiem. Mozart died in his home on the 5th of December, 1791, aged 35, at 12:55 a.m. The last piece Mozart worked on before his death, his Requiem, was left unfinished. Many composers have taken on the task of finishing the work, but the most successful completion is by Mozart's student at the time of his death, Franz Xaver Susemeyer. The Requiem is written with influences from and in the more learned style of church music at the time. At the time, church music was backward-looking to the styles of the Baroque period, with a heavy emphasis on counterpoint. Mozart esteemed Handel, and in 1789 he was commissioned by Baron Gottfried van Swieten to arrange the Messiah. This work likely influenced the composition of Mozart's Requiem. His Kyrie is based on the "and with his stripes we are healed" chorus from Handel's Messiah, since the subject of the Fugato is the same with only slight variations by adding ornaments on the melisma. The Requiem is scored for an orchestra with 2 basset horns in F, 2 bassoons, 2 trumpets in D, 3 trombones, timpani, violins, violas, and basso continuo, cello, double bass, and organ. The basset horn parts are sometimes played on conventional clarinets, even though this changes the sonority. The vocal forces consist of soprano, contralto, tenor, and bass soloists, and an SATB mixed choir. The addition of the basso continuo is a holdover from the older church style, as is the addition of trombones in the orchestra. Modern orchestras at the time did not have trombones outside of liturgical orchestras, except when used in operatic settings like Mozart's own Don Giovanni. Even though Mozart used trombones in his opera Don Giovanni, they didn't lose their association with the church and God. The trombones are used in Don Giovanni when, spoiler alert, Don Giovanni is faced with an avenging statue and is dragged to hell. Let's hear a part of the Kyrie, a double fugue based on that Handelian subject from the Messiah. Mozart's acclaim, guided and fostered by his widow Constance, continued to flourish in the years after his death. His works continued to influence many composers, including Beethoven, Chopin, and Tchaikovsky. Mozart redefined music in his life by ushering in the classical era with help from Haydn. His contemporary importance remains great. His works are played by orchestras all over the world every season, and a number of his operas have earned a permanent place in the repertory of the world's greatest opera houses. Mozart's legacy is of an artist that struggled to make it himself without courtly patronage, a model that would be followed by many musicians after him, including the likes of Beethoven. Thank you for joining me in the video about the life of Mozart. I hope you heard a lot of great music by him and that you will continue to search out more masterworks. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. This really helps with the YouTube algorithm and would mean a lot to me. My bibliography for this series of videos is on my website, dominiqueroyam.com. A link to it can be found in the description box below. Also in the description box is a link to my Patreon where you can support the making of these videos. Thank you so much for watching and see you in my next video.